The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest, but I kept chewing my overcooked pot roast. My ex never let me down, Vanna said for what had to be the 1000th time, her fork clicking against the ceramic plate with that annoying precision she'd perfected over our 15 years of marriage. He always followed through on his promises. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I swallowed the dry meat and looked across our dining room table at my wife. Vanna Holden Ravell sat there in her designer blouse, probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget, with that familiar expression of disappointment etched across her face. The same look she'd been giving me for the past 3 years, ever since her mother started whispering poison in her ear about settling and upgrading. Our 16-year-old son, Nate, shifted uncomfortably in his chair, stabbing at his mashed potatoes like they'd personally offended him. The kid had heard this routine so many times he could probably recite it verbatim. Hell, we all could. You know what, Vanna? I set down my fork and met her eyes directly. Then you married the wrong man. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. In all our years together, through all her subtle digs and not-so-subtle comparisons, I'd never fired back. I'd been the good husband, the understanding one, the guy who just took it and kept trying harder. Holden, I didn't mean... I can fix that, I interrupted, my voice steady as granite. The silence that followed was deafening. Nate's fork stopped moving. Even the grandfather clock in the corner seemed to pause between ticks. Vanna's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the shock spreading across her features. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. Excuse me, I need to make a phone call. Walking to my home office, I could hear Vanna's voice behind me, higher pitched than usual, trying to explain to Nate that Daddy was just having a bad day, but I wasn't having a bad day. I was having a moment of absolute clarity. I closed the office door and pulled out my phone. The number was already in my contacts, Clint Morrison, my college roommate who'd gone on to become one of the best divorce attorneys in New England. I'd programmed his number 3 months ago, the night Vanna had spent 2 hours on the phone with her friend Jessa, loudly discussing how some women just settle for mediocrity. The phone rang twice before his familiar gravelly voice answered. Holden? Kinda late for a social call, isn't it? Clint, I need a lawyer. There was a pause. What kind of trouble are you in? The kind that's been 15 years in the making. The next morning, I sat in Clint's downtown office, surrounded by law books and the smell of expensive leather furniture. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the city waking up below. People hurrying to work, living their normal lives, yet completely unaware that my world had shifted on its axis. So let me get this straight, Clint said, leaning back in his chair. He looked exactly like what you'd expect from a successful attorney. Sharp suit, silver hair, eyes that missed nothing. You want to file for divorce because your wife keeps comparing you to her ex-boyfriend? It's more than that. I pulled out a manila folder I'd been secretly compiling for months. Take a look. Inside were bank statements, credit card bills, receipts, and printed emails. 3 months of detective work, all perfectly legal. When you share accounts with someone, it's amazing what you can discover if you actually pay attention. Jesus, Holden. Clint whistled low as he flipped through the papers. She spent $8,000 at that fitness place? What is it, some kind of spa? It's called Apex Wellness Center, run by a guy named Trey Blackwood, former personal trainer, now he's into this whole lifestyle coaching thing. You know the type. Protein shakes, motivational quotes, probably drives a Range Rover he can't afford. And you think? I don't think anything. I know. I pointed to a credit card statement. Look at the dates. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 4 months. Same time, same charges. And look here, she's been buying 2 smoothies each time. Clint studied the documents with the focused intensity that had made him one of the most feared divorce attorneys in the state. This is good work, Holden. They're really good. But I have to ask, are you sure you want to go nuclear? We could try mediation first. I thought about all the dinners where I'd listened to stories about her ex's ambition, his success, his romantic gestures, all the times she'd sighed dramatically when I came home from my job appraising commercial properties, like I'd somehow failed her by choosing a stable, honest profession. All the conversations with her mother where I was dismissed as adequate and safe. Nuclear sounds about right. Okay then. Clint opened his laptop. Let's talk strategy. First thing we need to do is protect your assets. You mentioned you own rental property? A duplex on Maple Street. I bought it 5 years ago with money from my father's life insurance. It's in my name only, but since we're married... Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, so normally she'd have a claim. But if you can prove it was separate property... He was already typing. We need to move fast. How quickly can you get me the deed and insurance paperwork? I brought copies. I slid another folder across his desk. Along with documentation showing the down payment came from my father's policy. Clint grinned. You know, for a property appraiser, you think like a lawyer. What else you got? Joint savings account with about $40,000. I can transfer my portion to a separate account today. Legally, half of it's mine anyway. Do it. What about the house? Mortgage is in both names, but I've been making the payments from my account for the past 2 years. Got all the bank records to prove it. For the next hour, we went through everything. Clint explained how Massachusetts divorce law worked, what I could expect in terms of custody for Nate, and how to protect myself financially. By the time I left his office, I had a clear plan of action. My first stop was the bank. Jennifer Walsh, my account manager, looked surprised when I walked in at 10 in the morning. I usually only came by to deposit checks or handle business for my appraisal company. Mr. Ravell, what brings you in today? I need to make some changes to my accounts, Jen. Big changes. 20 minutes later, I walked out with a new checking account containing exactly $20,000, my half of our joint savings. I'd also set up a trust fund for Nate, transferring ownership of my rental property into it with myself as the trustee. Perfectly legal. And ironically, it would protect Nate's college fund from any divorce settlement. My phone buzzed as I got to my car. A text from my coworker Derek. Coffee? You sounded weird when you called in sick. Derek Russo was the closest thing I had to a best friend. We'd worked together at Pinnacle Property Appraisals for 8 years, and he was the kind of guy who'd help you move a body without asking questions. Not that I was planning anything illegal, but loyalty like that was rare. I found him at Murphy's Diner, our usual spot, hunched over a cup of coffee that looked strong enough to wake anyone. Derek was built like a linebacker, which he had been back in high school, but he had the gentle eyes of someone who'd seen enough of life's hard edges to appreciate the good parts. You look like hell, he said as I slid into the booth across from him. Thanks for the pep talk. Seriously, what's going on? You never call in sick. I told him everything. The years of comparisons, the evidence I'd gathered, the meeting with Clint, the financial moves I'd made that morning. Derek listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. Snake, he finally said. I never liked Vanna, you know that, but this is cold. Gets worse. I think her friend Jessa knows about the affair, maybe even encouraged it. The influencer chick? The one with the fake laugh? That's her. She's been around a lot lately, always whispering with Vanna, always checking their phones together. Derek leaned forward. So what's the plan? Phase 1 starts tonight. Clint's filing the papers tomorrow morning. Vanna gets served at her boutique. Public humiliation? I like it. Gets better. I'm having the locks changed this afternoon while she's at work. Perfectly legal. My name's on the mortgage, and I can prove I've been making the payments. Where's she going to stay? I smiled for the first time in months. That's her problem to solve. Maybe her ex never let her down, but he's not around to help her now. Derek grinned back. You magnificent bastard. What do you need from me? How are you with security cameras? The locksmith finished his work at 3:30, just as Nate was getting home from school. My son stood in the driveway, staring at the man loading his tools into a van marked Secure Solutions. Dad, what's going on? I'd been dreading this conversation, but there was no way around it. Come inside, son. We need to talk. Nate followed me into the living room, his backpack sliding off his shoulder onto the floor. He had Vanna's dark hair but my stubborn jawline, and right now he looked like he was bracing for bad news. Your mother and I are getting divorced. The words hung in the air between us. Nate's face went through a series of expressions, surprise, confusion, and then something that looked almost like relief. Because of the things she says about you? Smart kid. Too smart for his own good sometimes. That's part of it. But there are other things, Nate. Adult things that I can't really explain right now. Is she cheating on you? The directness of the question caught me off guard. What makes you ask that? She's been different lately, happier, but not because of us. And she's always on her phone, texting someone. When I ask who it is, she gets weird about it. I sat down on the couch and patted the cushion next to me. Nate joined me, and for a moment we just sat there in silence. Yeah, I finally said. I think she is. With that gym guy, Trey? How do you know about Trey? She talks about him sometimes. How motivational he is, how he's helping her become a better version of herself, It's gross, Dad. Like, really gross. Has she brought him around here? No, but Nate hesitated. Last week when you were working late, she had me go to Grandma Heslor's for dinner. Said she needed some alone time to think. But when I came home, there was a car in the driveway I didn't recognize. Big black SUV. Range Rover. Had to be. Did you see him? Just from behind. Tall guy, really built. He left right after I got home. I felt a rage building in my chest that was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Bad enough that Vanna was cheating, but bringing her boyfriend to our house? Around our son? Nate, I need you to know that none of this is your fault, and no matter what happens between your mother and me, we both love you. I know, Dad, and for what it's worth, I think you're better off without her. The maturity in his voice broke my heart a little. 16 years old and already wise enough to see what I'd been blind to for years. My phone rang. Vanna's ringtone, Material Girl by Madonna. Derek's idea of a joke when he'd programmed it months ago, but now it seemed prophetic. Hello, Vanna. Holden, what the hell is going on? I just got home and my key doesn't work. That's because I had the locks changed. Silence. Then, you can't do that. This is my house, too. Actually, I can. Check your email. Clint sent you some reading material. I could hear her fumbling with her phone, probably trying to access her email while standing on our front porch. The thought of the neighbors watching this unfold made me smile. A restraining order? Holden, are you insane? Temporary restraining order. Big difference. It means you can't come into the house or contact me except through attorneys until we sort this out. You're making a huge mistake. The only mistake I made was waiting this long. I hung up and immediately called Clint. She got the papers. How'd she take it? About as well as you'd expect. She's standing on the front porch right now, probably trying to figure out her next move. Good. Let her stew. The more emotional she gets, the more mistakes she'll make. Through the living room window, I could see Vanna pacing back and forth on the porch, her phone pressed to her ear, probably calling her mother or Jessa, looking for sympathy and a place to crash. Dad? Nate was watching too. Is she going to be okay? Your mother is a survivor, son. She'll land on her feet. What I didn't say was that I was going to make sure the landing was as hard as possible. An hour later, Derek showed up with a box of security equipment. Wireless cameras, he explained, pulling out devices that looked like smoke detectors. Battery-powered, connect to your phone. We can have eyes on the whole property in about an hour. Is this legal? It's your house, isn't it? You can put cameras anywhere you want on your own property. We spent the rest of the afternoon installing cameras at strategic points around the house and yard. Front door, back door, driveway, and one overlooking the street. By the time we finished, I had a complete surveillance system that would record everything in high definition. Now what? Derek asked as we tested the system on my phone. Now we wait. Vanna's not the type to go quietly. She'll be back, probably with backup. I was right. At 8:30 that evening, my phone chimed with a motion alert from the front door camera. Vanna was back, and she wasn't alone. The man with her had to be Trey Blackwood. Even through the grainy camera feed, I could see he was everything I wasn't. Tall, muscular, with the kind of artificial confidence that came from spending too much time in front of mirrors. He wore a tight-fitting polo shirt that showed off his physique and jeans that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in 6 months. They stood at the front door for several minutes, Vanna gesticulating wildly while Trey nodded and occasionally glanced around the neighborhood. Finally, Trey approached the door and knocked. 3 sharp raps that echoed through the house. Mr. Ravell, I'm Trey Blackwood. I think we need to talk. I looked at Nate, who was doing homework at the kitchen table. Stay here, son. I opened the door but left the chain latch engaged, creating a gap just wide enough to see them clearly. Up close, Trey was even more impressive physically, probably 6'3" with the kind of muscle definition that required serious dedication to achieve. But his eyes were empty, like a shark's. What do you want, Trey? Look, man, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Vanna and I were just friends. I'm her wellness coach. Is that what we're calling it now? Vanna pushed forward. Holden, please. Can we just talk about this like adults? Adults don't cheat on their spouses. I never cheated. But her voice cracked on the words, and Trey shot her a look that confirmed everything I suspected. Here's what's going to happen, I said, looking directly at Trey. You're going to get in your overpriced SUV and drive away. Vanna, you're going to communicate with me through lawyers from now on, and if either of you sets foot on my property again, I'm calling the police. Trey stepped closer to the door, trying to intimidate me with his size. Maybe we should settle this man to man. I smiled. Maybe we should. But not tonight, and not here. My son's inside doing homework. This isn't over, Trey said. No, I agreed. It's not. After they left, I checked the camera footage on my phone. The entire conversation had been recorded in perfect clarity, including Trey's implied threat. I sent a copy to Clint immediately. His response came back 5 minutes later. Beautiful. This guy's an idiot. Keep the cameras rolling. The next morning brought the first real test of my resolve. I was drinking coffee and reading the paper when Nate came downstairs, dressed for school but looking troubled. Dad, there's something you need to see. He handed me his phone, opened to Instagram. Vanna had posted a long message about going through a difficult time and how some people change when they feel threatened. The post had dozens of comments, mostly from her friends offering support and condemning me as a controlling husband. She's playing victim, Nate said, making it sound like you just snapped for no reason. I scrolled through the comments, recognizing names of people I'd considered friends. Sarah Mitchell from down the street. I always thought Holden seemed controlling. Tom Bradley from my poker group. Vanna deserves better. It stung, but I'd expected it. Vanna was good at manipulating narratives, and she had a head start on the social media front. Let them think what they want, I told Nate. Truth has a way of coming out. After dropping Nate at school, I drove to Vanna's boutique, curated in the trendy downtown shopping district. I wasn't planning to go inside. That would violate the restraining order, but I wanted to see how she was handling the pressure. Through the large front windows, I could see her moving around the store, rearranging displays with sharp, aggressive movements. She looked like she hadn't slept, and her usual perfect appearance was showing cracks. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing the same outfit from yesterday. My phone rang. Derek. You see the news yet? What news? Check Channel 7's website. Someone leaked your divorce filing to the press. I pulled up the website on my phone. The headline read, Local businessman files for divorce, alleges wife's affair. The article was short, but detailed enough to include quotes from the court documents about Vanna's inappropriate relationship with her fitness instructor. How did they get this? Public records, probably, but someone had to tip them off that it was worth looking into. I had a pretty good idea who that someone was. Jessa Martinez made her living as a social media influencer, which meant she understood the value of drama and publicity. If she thought she could profit from our situation, she wouldn't hesitate to feed information to the press. But two could play that game. I spent the rest of the morning at my office, catching up on work I'd neglected while planning my divorce strategy. Property appraisal might not be glamorous, but it was steady work that paid well, and I'd built a solid reputation over the years. Unlike some people, I didn't need to reinvent myself every few months to stay relevant. Around noon, my assistant Linda knocked on my door. There's a woman here to see you. Says her name is Jessa Martinez. Interesting. Send her in. Jessa swept into my office like she owned the place, all flowing scarves and designer handbag. She was attractive in an artificial way. Too much makeup, too much perfume, too much everything. Her Instagram bio described her as a lifestyle influencer and wellness advocate, which as far as I could tell meant she got paid to pose with products she'd never actually use. Holden, we need to talk. Do we? I wasn't aware we had anything to discuss. She sat down without being invited and crossed her legs dramatically. This whole thing with Vanna is getting out of hand. The press attention, the social media drama, it's not good for anyone. Especially not for your brand? Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly. I don't know what you mean. Come on, Jessa. You make your living off drama and attention. My divorce is probably the most interesting thing to happen in your circle in months. That's not... How much did Channel 7 pay you for the tip about the court filing? She had the grace to look embarrassed, but only for a second. Look, Holden, I'm trying to help here. Vanna's my friend, and I hate seeing her go through this. Funny way of showing it. She made a mistake, okay? The thing with Trey, it's not what you think. Now she had my attention. Really? What is it then? It's complicated. Trey, he's not exactly what he seems. Meaning? Jessa glanced around my office like she was afraid of being overheard. He's got a history. Other married women, other situations like this. He targets wives who are feeling neglected, makes them feel special, gets them to spend money on his programs. And you're telling me this because? Because Vanna's in over her head. She thinks he cares about her, but he's just using her. And when this all blows up, she's going to be the one left holding the bag. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. Jessa was many things, but she wasn't stupid. If she was here warning me about Trey, there had to be an angle. What do you want, Jessa? I want you to go easy on her. Don't destroy her completely. She's still Nate's mother. That's touching, but you still haven't told me what you get out of this. She sighed. Trey approached me last month, wanted me to promote his wellness program to my followers. When I said no, he got unpleasant. Unpleasant how? Threatening. Said he had ways of ruining my reputation if I didn't cooperate. I think he's been taking pictures, maybe recording conversations with his clients. Insurance, he called it. Now things were getting interesting. Do you have proof of this? Not exactly, but I know Vanna's been acting paranoid lately, always checking her phone, worried about what people might find out. I think he's got something on her. Why should I believe you? Because whether you like me or not, I genuinely care about Vanna, and because Trey Blackwood is a predator who needs to be stopped. After Jessa left, I called Clint and filled him in on the conversation. His response was immediate. We need to investigate this guy. If he's running some kind of blackmail scheme, it changes everything. How so? If Vanna's being coerced or manipulated, it could affect the divorce settlement. More importantly, if this guy's targeting other women, we might be able to build a criminal case. What do you need from me? Everything you can find about Trey Blackwood. Financial records, business licenses, social media, whatever. And be careful. If Jess is right about him being dangerous, you don't want to spook him. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing research. Trey's business, Apex Wellness Center, had been operating for about 2 years. Before that, he'd worked at various gyms around the state, never staying anywhere for more than a year. His social media presence was slick and professional, full of motivational quotes and shirtless selfies, but there was something hollow about it. More interesting were the gaps in his history. No college records I could find, no professional certifications, and his business address was a P.O. box. For someone who claimed to be a wellness expert, he had remarkably few credentials. My phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Clint, then called Derek. I think I poked the bear, I said, reading him the text. Want me to come over? Yeah, and Derek, bring your baseball bat. Derek arrived at my house just as Nate was getting home from school. My son took one look at Derek's grim expression and the aluminum bat in his hand and immediately understood the situation. Should I call the police? Nate asked. Not yet, I said, but keep your phone handy. We didn't have to wait long. At 7:30, my security system alerted me to movement in the driveway. Through the camera feed, I could see Trey's black Range Rover pulling up to the house. This time, he was alone. Stay inside, I told Nate, then looked at Derek. Ready for this? Been ready since you told me about this asshole. We went out through the front door, leaving it open so Nate could hear everything. Trey was standing next to his SUV, arms crossed, trying to look intimidating. In the daylight, I could see details I'd missed before. Expensive watch, designer sunglasses, the kind of artificial tan that came from a salon rather than actual outdoor work. Mr. Ravell, I think we got off on the wrong foot last night. Did we? Because I thought I was pretty clear about not wanting you on my property. Look, I get it. You're upset about Vanna. But this doesn't have to get ugly. Derek stepped up beside me, the bat resting casually on his shoulder. Sounds like a threat to me, Holden. Trey's eyes flicked to Derek, sizing him up. Derek wasn't as tall as Trey, but he was broader and had the look of someone who'd been in real fights, not just gym sparring sessions. No threat, Trey said. Just trying to be reasonable here. Reasonable would be staying away from my wife. Your soon-to-be ex-wife, and she's a grown woman who can make her own choices. Is that what you tell all the married women you target? Something shifted in Trey's expression. The fake friendliness disappeared, replaced by something colder. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? How many others have there been, Trey? How many marriages have you destroyed for your own entertainment? I help people become better versions of themselves. If that threatens you, maybe you should look in the mirror. Derek laughed. Better versions? Is that what we're calling home wrecking now? Trey took a step forward. You want to say that to my face? I just did. For a moment, I thought Trey was going to take a swing at Derek. His hands clenched into fists, and I could see the muscles in his jaw working. But then he seemed to remember where he was and who might be watching. This isn't over, he said, echoing his words from the night before. You're right, I agreed. It's not. Because tomorrow morning I'm filing a harassment complaint with the police, and I'm sending copies of your threatening text to the state licensing board. What licensing board? The one that oversees fitness instructors and wellness coaches. I'm sure they'd be very interested to know about your business practices. Trey's face went pale. You can't prove anything. Can't I? I've got security footage of you on my property twice now, despite being asked to leave. I've got your threatening text message. and I've got witnesses who can testify about your pattern of targeting married women." "What witnesses?" I smiled. "Ask Jessa." That hit home. Trey's carefully constructed composure cracked completely, and for a moment I saw the real man underneath. Angry, desperate, and more than a little scared. "You have no idea who you're messing with," he said. "Sure I do. I'm messing with a small-time con artist who got too greedy and picked the wrong mark." Trey got back in his Range Rover and peeled out of the driveway, leaving rubber marks on the asphalt. Derek and I watched him go, then looked at each other. "Think that's the end of it?" Derek asked. "Not a chance. Guys like him don't back down easy. They escalate." I was right. The next morning, I woke up to find my car keyed and my mailbox knocked over. The security cameras had caught everything, Trey creeping around my property at 3 a.m. like a teenager playing pranks. But he'd made a critical error. In his anger, he'd looked directly into one of the cameras, giving me a perfect shot of his face. Even better, his license plate was clearly visible as he drove away. I called the police and filed a formal complaint, providing copies of the video footage. Officer Maria Santos, who took my statement, was thorough and professional. "This is pretty clear-cut vandalism," she said, reviewing the footage on her tablet. "We'll issue a warrant for his arrest." "How long will that take?" "Depends on whether he turns himself in or we have to track him down. Either way, he's looking at criminal mischief charges, possibly harassment if we can prove a pattern." After Officer Santos left, I called Clint with an update. His reaction was exactly what I'd hoped for. "Perfect. This changes everything. We can use his arrest record in the divorce proceedings to argue that Vanna showed poor judgment in her choice of companions." "What about custody?" "Even better. No judge is going to award custody to a parent who's involved with someone who has a criminal record for stalking and vandalism." The rest of the day passed quietly. I went to work, caught up on some appraisals I'd been putting off, and tried to pretend my life wasn't imploding. But around 5 o'clock, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Holden Ravell?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Rebecca Chen. I'm a reporter with Channel 7 News. I'm working on a story about Trey Blackwood, and I understand you've had some dealings with him?" "Interesting. What kind of story?" "We've received allegations that Mr. Blackwood has been involved in inappropriate relationships with multiple married clients. Would you be willing to speak on the record about your experiences?" I thought about it for a moment. Going public would escalate things considerably, but it might also put pressure on Trey to back down. "I'll talk to you, but not on the record yet. I want to know what you've found first." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown. Rebecca Chen turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s with the kind of focused intensity that made good investigative reporters. She had a thick file folder with her and didn't waste time on small talk. "We've been investigating Mr. Blackwood for about a month," she said. "Started with a tip from someone who claimed he was running a scam targeting wealthy married women." "What kind of scam?" "Classic honey trap. He seduces them, gets them emotionally invested, then starts asking for money. Sometimes it's for his business, sometimes it's for personal emergencies. The amounts start small but escalate quickly." She opened her folder and showed me printed emails, bank records, and photographs. 3 different women, all married, all wealthy, all telling similar stories about how Trey had convinced them to invest in his wellness programs. "How much money are we talking about?" "So far, about $200,000 spread across 5 women over the past 2 years. I whistled low. "That's serious fraud." "Gets worse. We think he's been recording his encounters with some of these women. Insurance, like you said. If they threaten to expose him, he threatens to expose them." "Have you gone to the police?" "We're working with them, but we need more evidence, more victims willing to come forward. That's why I wanted to talk to you." I told her everything. The affair, the threats, the vandalism, the divorce proceedings. She took notes and asked pointed questions, building a timeline of Trey's behavior. "There's something else," she said when I finished. "We think your wife might not be his only current target." "What do you mean?" "We've identified 2 other women who've been seen with him recently. Both married, both wealthy, both attending his private coaching sessions." The implications hit me like a punch to the gut. Vanna wasn't special to Trey. She was just another mark in his long-term con game. "Does she know?" "We don't think so. Based on our investigation, he's very good at making each woman feel like she's the only one." I thought about Vanna, probably sitting in some hotel room or friend's guest bedroom, convinced that she'd found true love with a man who was simultaneously working 2 other women for money. "What do you need from me?" "Would you be willing to go on camera, tell your story?" "When?" "Tonight, if possible. We're planning to confront Mr. Blackwood tomorrow morning, and we want to have all our pieces in place first. I agreed to the interview, but first I called Clint to make sure I wasn't doing anything that would hurt the divorce case. Actually, this helps us, he said. If Blackwood's a known con artist, it makes Vanna look like a victim rather than a willing participant. Could work in our favor for custody. The interview took place at the Channel 7 studios downtown. Rebecca was professional and thorough, asking me to walk through the entire timeline of events. When we finished, she showed me rough cuts of interviews with two of Trey's other victims. The stories were heartbreakingly similar. Lonely wives, feeling neglected in their marriages, targeted by a predator who knew exactly what they wanted to hear. In each case, Trey had convinced them that their husbands didn't appreciate them, that they deserved better, that he could help them find their true selves. When does this air? I asked. Tomorrow night, but we'll be releasing clips online throughout the day, building up to the full investigation. I drove home feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Trey Blackwood was about to get what he deserved, but the collateral damage was going to be significant. Vanna's humiliation would be public and complete. But as I pulled into my driveway and saw my keyed car and broken mailbox, I reminded myself that she'd made her choices. Now she'd have to live with the consequences. The story broke at 6 a.m. with a teaser on Channel 7's morning show. Tonight at 11, a Channel 7 investigation reveals how a local fitness instructor allegedly scammed multiple women out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. My phone started ringing immediately. Clint, Derek, even my mother calling from Florida after seeing the story shared on social media. But the call I was waiting for came at 8:30. Holden, what have you done? Vanna's voice was shaking with rage and what sounded like panic. In the background, I could hear a television playing the same news teaser on repeat. I told the truth. You destroyed me. Do you have any idea what this is going to do to my reputation? My business? Should have thought about that before you started cheating. I never took any money from Trey. Maybe not, but according to the bank records I've seen, you spent plenty of our money on his programs. Silence. Then, in a smaller voice, how bad is it going to be? For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt a flicker of sympathy for her. Whatever else Vanna was, she was still Nate's mother, and she was about to be humiliated on a scale she couldn't imagine. Bad, I said honestly. They have video, financial records, testimony from multiple women, and they're planning to confront Trey on camera this morning. Oh, God. Vanna, listen to me. You need to get ahead of this. Call your own lawyer, prepare a statement, distance yourself from Trey as much as possible. Why are you helping me? Because despite everything, I don't want to see you completely destroyed, and because Nate doesn't deserve to have his mother become a national punchline. She hung up without saying goodbye. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of phone calls and text messages. Friends, co-workers, even people I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out after seeing the news coverage. Most were supportive, but a few made it clear they thought I'd gone too far. At noon, Channel 7 released their first online clip, Rebecca Chen confronting Trey outside his gym with cameras rolling. His reaction was everything I could have hoped for and more. Mr. Blackwood, Rebecca Chen, Channel 7 News. We'd like to ask you about allegations that you've been defrauding married women through your wellness programs. Trey's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, recognition, and then pure panic. He tried to push past the cameras, but Rebecca followed him to his Range Rover. We have financial records showing you received over $200,000 from 5 different married women. Would you like to comment? This is harassment. I'm calling my lawyer. What about the recordings you allegedly made of intimate encounters with your clients? Can you comment on those allegations? That stopped him cold. He turned back to face the camera, and for a moment his mask slipped completely. The confident wellness guru disappeared, replaced by a cornered animal. I don't know what you're talking about. We have testimony from multiple women who say you threatened to release compromising material if they stopped paying for your services. Trey got in his SUV and drove away, but not before the cameras caught him making an obscene gesture at the news crew. The clip went viral within hours. By evening, the full investigation had aired, and the fallout was swift and brutal. Trey's gym membership was canceled, his business license was under review, and the district attorney's office announced they were opening a criminal investigation into fraud allegations. But the most satisfying moment came the next morning when I opened my front door to get the newspaper and found Vanna standing on my porch. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, and her eyes were red from crying. Can we talk? She asked. I led her into the kitchen where Nate was eating breakfast before school. He looked up when his mother walked in, and I saw a flash of pity cross his face. Hi, Mom. Hi, baby. Vanna's voice cracked. How are you holding up? I'm okay. Are you? She started crying then, big ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Nate got up and hugged her, and for a moment they looked like the family we used to be. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry for everything. After Nate left for school, Vanna and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table where this had all started just a week ago. She looked small and broken, nothing like the confident woman who'd been comparing me to her ex. I never meant for any of this to happen, she said. What did you think was going to happen? I don't know. I felt so invisible, Holden, like I was disappearing into this life I never really wanted. So you decided to have an affair. I didn't plan it. Trey, he made me feel special, like I mattered. You did matter. You were my wife. Was I? Or was I just this thing you came home to every night? When's the last time you really looked at me, Holden? Really saw me? The question hung between us. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but there was truth in what she said. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being partners and become roommates. That doesn't excuse what you did. I know, and I know it's too late to fix it. I just wanted you to understand. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Outside, I could hear the neighborhood waking up. Cars starting, dogs barking, the normal sounds of people going about their lives. What happens now? Vanna asked. Now we get divorced. We figure out custody. We try to minimize the damage to Nate. And Trey? Trey's going to prison. The DA's office has enough evidence to put him away for years. She nodded, accepting the inevitable. I never took any money from him, you know. He never asked me for money. I know. You weren't the target, Vanna. You were the distraction. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the news coverage from the past 24 hours. While everyone was focused on the affair and the divorce drama, investigators had discovered that Trey had been using his relationship with Vanna to gain access to information about my property appraisal business. He was planning to use insider information from my appraisals to flip properties. Your affair was just a way to get close to my work. The color drained from her face. He was using me. He was using both of us. That afternoon, I got a call from Detective Santos. Trey Blackwood had been arrested on multiple charges of fraud, extortion, and identity theft. They'd found evidence of his schemes dating back 5 years, involving dozens of women across 3 states. He's looking at 20 to life, Santos told me, and we found something else you should know about. What? Hidden cameras in his gym and office. Looks like he was recording everything. Training sessions, private meetings, intimate encounters. We're still going through the footage, but there are hundreds of hours of material. The implications were staggering. Trey hadn't just been running financial scams, he'd been creating blackmail material on a massive scale. Was my wife recorded? We're still reviewing everything, but it's likely. We'll let you know if we find anything relevant to your situation. I hung up and immediately called Clint to update him on the criminal case. His response was immediate and decisive. This changes everything. We can argue that Vanna was the victim of a sophisticated predator. The judge will be sympathetic. What does that mean for the divorce? It means we can probably work out a settlement that's fair to everyone. She gets to keep some dignity, you get what you want in terms of custody and assets, and we avoid a messy trial. The settlement negotiations took 3 weeks. In the end, Vanna agreed to joint custody with me having primary residence. I kept the house and my rental property, and we split the remaining assets 50-50. She got to keep her boutique and enough money to start over. More importantly, the media attention faded once Trey was arrested and the real scope of his crimes became clear. Vanna was portrayed as a victim rather than a villain, which helped protect Nate from the worst of the public scrutiny. On the day our divorce was finalized, Vanna and I met for coffee one last time. She looked better, healthier, more like herself. She'd started therapy and was working on rebuilding her life. I want you to know I'm grateful, she said, for how you handled everything. You could have destroyed me completely. You're Nate's mother. That matters more than my hurt feelings. Still, thank you. We shook hands like business partners closing a deal, which in a way we were. 6 months later, I was reading the paper over breakfast when Nate came downstairs, dressed for school. Dad, there's something I want to tell you. What's that? I'm proud of you, for how you handled everything with Mom and that creep Trey. Thanks, son. And for what it's worth, I think you're better off without her. I looked at my 16-year-old son, already wiser than his years, and smiled. You know what, Nate? For the 1000th time, you're absolutely right.